I want to tell you a story of a woman named Deborah who came to see me in the office. She was in her 50s. She had a brain aneurysm. It was right in the center of her brain. If you drew a line between your eyes and between your ears, where those two lines would intersect, that is where this aneurysm was. It was a difficult aneurysm to treat. It was a complex aneurysm. She was a smoker. I said, Deborah, why don't we wait and see if you can stop smoking? That would make the surgery safer. That would make me feel better about it. It's high-risk surgery anyway, but it would make me feel better if you stopped smoking. She said, Doctor, I've tried. I'm not going to stop. I want to do this surgery as soon as possible. I want this over quickly. I said, okay, it's not an emergency, but I understand if you want us to do it, let's do it. So I put her on the schedule, and then I said, as I do to all my patients, Deborah, I always offer to pray with my patients before their surgery. Many people find that it gives them peace and comfort. And if that's something that you would like, you'll need to ask me for that on the day of your surgery. I say it that way with people who are in an elective situation, someone who is, an emergency. I don't necessarily have time to have them ask me later, but what I don't want to do is put any pressure on anyone that they have to pray. I've found that it gives many people peace and comfort, but some people really don't want it. And if that's the case, it's not up to me to push this out. And this is really something that, if it's going to give them peace and comfort, I don't want to miss it for them. But it's not something that I have to do. If it's an emergency situation, I may say, and they say yes, they want prayer, I would say, do you want me to pray silently on my own, or should we pray together now? And let them choose what they would like. Because again, I believe that it should be a blessing to them. There are so many people in the culture that feel God is angry with them, or that they are being judged if you bring up the subject of God or prayer. And I want to do just the opposite. I want them to know, no, God actually is not angry with you. He loves you. If this is something that would be a blessing to you, let's do this. And I think that as physicians, oftentimes we can do that for people, because when people get sick, they're often thinking God is punishing me. And certainly there are consequences for our actions. But I don't believe that the vindictive, vengeful God that many people have grown up with or believe in is something that is helpful during a medical emergency or during medical care. In fact, the research shows just the opposite, that the people who believe that faith is useful in a medical situation, unless you believe that God is angry with you, then your faith is actually not useful, that it can be actually the opposite. So back to Deborah, she said, oh yeah, I want that, because she said, I go to church every week. I said, fine. The day of her surgery, I went into the preoperative area, and Deborah was there, and she was much less anxious on the day of her surgery, surprisingly, than she had been at the office visit. And she asked me for the prayer, and so we had a prayer. And then she said something that I've never heard any patient say before. She said, Doctor, it's okay if I die. If it happens, don't worry about it. Well, I'd never heard that before. And, had I been a psychiatrist, I might have actually spent a little time exploring that. But as a surgeon, I just dismissed it like, well, there it is, I've got to get off to surgery. The train was already moving down the tracks, and I certainly didn't want to delay things to explore this. Well, she's just letting me off the hook, isn't that? She must have tremendous faith, this woman. I love that. So off I went. We got her to surgery. She climbed up on the table, and we started the operation. Things were going very well. To fix an aneurysm in the brain, we start with a catheter, a tube down here. We thread it all the way up into the neck, then through that, going up inside the brain, inside the vessels of the brain, putting this little tiny catheter into the aneurysm and then putting metal coils in there. This aneurysm was a little bit more complex, so I had 2 catheters and a bunch of hardware to get the job done. I thought I'd finished the job. I did the angiogram, which is putting dye in to take a look at the blood flow through the vessels of the brain. I saw no blood flow going to the brain. So a huge amount of adrenaline dumps into my system, and I'm thinking, oh no, have the vessels clotted off? Has she had a hemorrhage? I mean, what is causing the blood? You can't survive without blood to your brain stem, which is where I was working, for more than a few minutes. So I do what I do in those situations and said, God help. And then tried to work at this to figure out what was going on. But all of a sudden the thought comes to me, as it does when you're a surgeon, like, who am I going to talk to in the waiting room if she dies? Oh, wait a minute, she said it's okay if she dies. And my next words were, well, God, it's not okay with me if she dies. And I just began working as hard as I could to get these vessels open. And 20 minutes later, I got the vessels open, and I had a picture that looked like the aneurysm was closed and the vessels to the brain were open, and I was thrilled, but cautiously thrilled, because I didn't know if she would wake up. And I went over to the other side of the room to write my note, and she began to wake up from anesthesia. And not only did she wake up, but she was fighting. She punched the nurse and the anesthetist. And they finally called me over and said, hey, can you settle her down? And so I walked over to her, and I put my hand on her shoulder and dodged a few blows, and I said, Deborah, it's Dr. Levy, I'm here with you. And so she settled down. She went up to the recovery room. I went to get some water and wash my face and just try to sort of come down from 20 minutes of solid adrenaline. And so as I walk in the recovery room, I see that she's crying. And that's not unusual. Patients cry after neurosurgery because they've been so anxious before, and finally when the surgery is over, they are so relieved. And so I said, Deborah, your surgery was difficult, but it went well, and I'm so glad that it went well. And she looked away with these tears in her eyes, and she said, I didn't want to survive. I was supposed to die. And I stood there just stunned. As I can tell you, neurosurgeons, we like a little gratitude. Maybe we're unusual, but we like a little gratitude coming back at us for all of that work. And I wasn't sure what to say to that. Like, I'm sorry, or like, what is the response when someone says I was supposed to die? Never had that happen before, but I didn't know what to say, and so when I have crying women and I don't know what to do, I just let the nurse handle it. So I just sort of slowly walked away. And thankfully, the nurses usually know what to do in those situations. It took me probably a good part of a week to recover from that surgery. I don't know if people realize what it costs a physician to recover from a difficult case. There is a high price. You don't sleep well probably for a couple days or a week after that. I saw her 2 weeks later in the office, and I was sure that she would have a new lease on life now that she's alive. And I was wrong. She was as depressed as ever. She was the last patient on my schedule that day, so I'm tired. And I walked into the exam room, and she's just depressed as ever, and I smell cigarette smoke on her breath, which is going to undo all the work that I've just done. And I don't like her. I'm not getting anything from this, which is making me sort of irritable and angry, and it's the last patient of the day. And I just want her out of my office. I just want to go home. I don't want to deal with this. And I remember this little saying, and that is, your joy in life is dependent on how you treat weakness when you see it. Your joy in life is dependent on how you treat weakness when you see it. You see, as a neurosurgeon, I don't want anyone to see my weakness. In fact, most of you may think I don't have any. That's the way that most of us want it. We don't show our weakness. We don't want anyone to know that we have weaknesses, but we all know that we have them. And the way we treat weakness when we see it is also going to be the way that we treat ourselves. And the opposite, the way we treat ourselves, will be the way we treat others. If we treat ourselves in a condemning, critical tone whenever we make a mistake, we're going to do that with others. If we are self-compassionate and kind with ourselves, to speak with ourselves when we make a mistake as if we were talking to our best friend, coming up with reasons why maybe you were overwhelmed. This is what was happening there. Yeah, you're human. It's okay. But when we treat other people, when we see weakness and we just want to dismiss it, as this is just a weak person, I don't need this in my life, I'm also saying, I hope nobody sees the weaknesses in me. I better hide them. And if I can be kind to weakness, and as I see it in other people, I will also be more kind to my own weaknesses. And so I did the best I could, and I said to her, Deborah, you really should see a psychiatrist. And she said, oh, doctor, I have one of those. He gave me the antidepressants I'm on, but they're not working. Oh, well, Deborah, you should really see a psychologist because they'll actually, they'll talk to you about your problems. Oh, yeah, she said, I've got one of those too. I didn't want to ask her the million-dollar question, open a Pandora's box and say, Deborah, why do you want to die? That's not my job. So I do what I do when I get in these situations. I saw in front of me sort of one of those growth opportunities. Do you ever see that when you're not feeling it, but you suddenly get this, like this is a growth moment. And then I shoot up this prayer, God, I don't see anything redeemable, valuable in this bitter, depressed, angry woman. Would you show me what you see? Because I don't see it. Well, after you shoot up a prayer like that, you can't really dismiss her. You can't send her out of the office. So I finally asked her, Deborah, why is it that you want to kill yourself? Why is it that you want to die? And she said, oh, I don't want to kill myself, doctor. You were supposed to do that. You see, I've been praying every week to die, and when I found out that I had an aneurysm, I knew that was my ticket out, because you see, I go to church every week, and I know if I kill myself, well, I'm not sure that I'd go to heaven, but if you do it, then that's my ticket out. So I'm thinking, you found the aneurysm, wanted to die, and came to me, and that's not flattering at all for my medical practice. Fortunately, I was the only one who does this surgery on her health plan, so that felt a little bit better. And so when she woke up from the surgery, and she was expecting to die and wake up in heaven. So that's why she was so excited about the whole thing. So she wakes up from surgery, and she's strapped down to a cold operating table with people sticking needles in her arms. She knows she's not in heaven. She thinks she went to the other place. So she's fighting everybody, right? She's hitting everyone. Well, it gets even more interesting. She settles down when I come and say, Deborah, I'm here with you. It is a common misconception that every place is better if you take your doctor with you. So she's been through 3 marriages, she said, that have failed. Father was abusive, and she got out of that relationship, and so much pain. No man's going to want me. I've been divorced 3 times, she said. And I said, Deborah, have you learned anything from those? I mean, you're probably a lot wiser now. I mean, 3 relationships, you're probably a lot wiser than you were when you started, would you say? Oh, yes, she said, much wiser. I know what to avoid now. I said, well, I wonder if people could use that wisdom. Maybe people in your church, in your social circle, maybe your family members. Deborah, I know a lot of people that attend church, they look down on divorced people. I bet you don't. I bet you have a lot of compassion on divorced people. Oh, yes, she said, I've got a lot of compassion for divorced people. I said, I believe that you are on this earth because there is a purpose for you. You have people that with your experience and your wisdom and your compassion, hard-earned compassion. And the word compassion means to suffer with. You understand what it's like to go through the breakup of a relationship, that when you speak, people will listen to you. And she went out of my office. She listened and she heard. And I got a letter from her 3 weeks later, and she said, I no longer want to die. I have started working at an elderly care center. I'm playing the piano for them. I discovered I do have gifts. I do have something to offer. And in conclusion, I just want to say, anyone can see dirt. Anyone can see what's wrong with people. In fact, we go through medical training, and that is what we're doing. To figure out what's wrong with you so then I can give you the right pill, the right surgery, the right help. We are trained to focus on what is wrong with people, and we also do it in our families and to the people that we love. We know exactly what they need to do to fix their lives. Anyone can see dirt. It takes a specialist to see the gold in the dirt, to call up out of people what is impressive about them, what is special about them, what is unique about them, what you find pleasurable about being around them. Everyone has redeeming qualities about them. And sometimes we may need to pray to actually see them, to see that this woman, Deborah, was just a woman, a little girl who never got love from her father or from any other man in her life. And to be able to show her some compassion and to bless her. People are literally dying to hear not what is wrong with them, but what is right with them, the beautiful things about them. And I hope that you will go home tonight, and to the people that you love and to your patients, find something beautiful and call up the goodness in them. Even if they seem like they're not accepting the compliment, you will say it anyway. Because many of us can't take a compliment, but we need to hear. We are like a desert, needing some water, someone to show us some appreciation, to show us how we make a difference in your life. With our smile, maybe with the way we dress, the things that we do, our funny sense of humor, the thoughtfulness that we showed at some point. Call those things up and bless the people in your life. Thank you very much.